we are still looking at the insecurity that has happened in some parts of the country, basically banditry, attacks and kidnappings in some parts of Nigeria. We've heard in Niger, part in Nasarawa. We've also talked about the one that recently happened in Ekiti local government, precisely in Kwara State, where we had our correspondent Bernard Akede share details as regards these very troubling incidents with us. So we will be discussing this current security crisis in Nigeria with a former national coordinator of the Middle Belt Patriots, and that is Zariyi Yusuf, and also be sharing his thoughts with us. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Yusuf. And if you did join us earlier, you would have listened to one of our correspondents talk about the attack in Kwara State. We've also had incidents in other places. But then, what do you make of this recent surge of violent attacks and kidnappings in schools and in communities of late Nigeria?
Well, thank you very much for having me. Let me begin by saying that I think these attacks are meant to complement a certain position the federal government has taken. Perhaps you might have had part of the submission the lady Oge did at the Congress. She made reference to the tendency that should any kinetic measure be taken by any foreign force, there is a tendency that the very people they are hoping to protect from these killings will end up as victims in a worse dimension. In other words, should you take any kinetic measures against the terrorist, the tendency is they would feel, aha, this measure taken against us is sympathy with the Christians, and so we will kill more of them. My thought is that these activities, these terrorist attacks, are meant to make it look that way. So the best option is stay out of it. You see, already they are escalating because you said you were going to come in. Now, I must say to you that I am not one of those that disconnect any Islamist group from the other. Their modus operandi is the same. I don't disconnect Boko Haram from ISWAP. I do not disconnect ISWAP from the Fulani Jihad militia. I don't disconnect the Fulani Jihad militia from whoever it is that calls himself a bandit or whatsoever. They are all Islamists. These attacks are heightening, like I said, in an attempt to make it look like any kinetic measure taken against terrorists in Nigeria will put the Christians at the receiving end. That basically is what I can make from these sudden attacks, either the Christians or the soft targets that happen to be Muslims, most likely the moderate ones who do not subscribe to that satanic ideology. That basically, summarily, that's what I make of this spike of attacks, especially in regions that were not commonly under such kinds of attack.
Okay, so do you also think it has any political undertone? Because Nigeria has experienced abductions for years, and some are saying there could be some political motivation for this. Does that also happen to be in the fray of this conversation?
Well, if you would ask me, I think the case in, Kebbi State, where, over 200, that over 200 were taken, the girls in Kebbi, it reminds me a lot of what happened during the abduction of the Chibok girls. It does seem that in an attempt, now this is my own suspicion as an individual, and frankly speaking, I would stand by the consequences of expressing my own submission. When the Chibok girls were taken, there was a massive campaign such that had a profound injury on the then ruling party. And then it looked as if everything was lost and all of that. In this scenario, so Nigeria is not a country where it is unreasonable for anyone to try to say there tends or there might be a political undertone under certain particular things that happen. Now, the abduction of these girls, if you would realize, there is a serious campaign of denying a Christian genocide, a serious campaign of denying a Christian genocide. And so that is one theory. It could look as if, well, if the ones taken now are all is it 26? Whatever, I can't exactly get the figures off my head. If the ones taken now are all Muslims, then what exactly do you make of claiming there's a Christian genocide? So it could come from that direction in another way to just diffuse, to just neutralize, to just dismiss the notion of a Christian genocide. And then, of course, it could have its own political undertone and all of that. But then it's not exactly a new thing in Nigeria, unfortunately, to abduct children, to take people away. These ones are students. It has happened to many, in many places. Sometimes it looks as if the government has forgotten about them, especially if they are just community members. They would have to hustle for money. They would have to pay ransom. And if possibly they feel the people they've abducted are too familiar with their faces, they collect the money and they kill some of them.
Okay.
So it's quite unfortunate, but then I will not disconnect it from some manipulations politically.
All right, Mr. Yusuf, an earlier guest suggested that there is complicity within the presidency and Nigeria's military, which has allowed kidnapping and banditry to persist. So,
pardon, sorry, I missed that.
Okay, so I said there was an earlier guest who actually said that there's a possibility of a complicity within the presidency and Nigeria's military, and that has allowed kidnapping and banditry to persist. So could a U.S. intervention at this point be the most effective solution?
That person that says he suspects complicity either from the ruling party or the administration or the military is not out of place. As a matter of fact, if you would ask me, I think dealing with the subject of the relationship or the attitude of the Nigerian government with regards to these Islamists, I think it is better dealt with as a matter of complicity than any failure or whatsoever. Reason being, we have a scenario where people who rape women, who kill, who carry possibly arms that are far more sophisticated than our military, carry firepower that a single soldier does not have. You look at the chains they wear, you look at the anti-aircraft guns, you look at the RPGs and all of that. They would ride on motorcycles for possibly a couple of kilometers, come into a community, and then they sit with Islamic clerics, they sit with armed military officers, with politicians, they hold the microphone, they give their brief and dictate why they should not be called terrorists, how they are also human beings and all of that. And then sometimes they are even chaired by the same people who are supposed to be their victims. Now, a government that sees that, and when they are done with what they are doing, they move back to where they came from. So you wonder what exactly happens to the Air Force? What exactly happens to the military? Why not wipe them out? But it looks as if there is a certain, the complicity is such that terrorism itself, Islamism, is being mainstreamed into the daily life of Nigerians. That is basically the nature of complicity I see. And that is why it will take an intervention, especially in the face of stark denial of an obvious genocide. It will take the intervention of certain foreign powers into the country for the sake of eliminating this terrorist, or perhaps waking Nigeria up to its responsibility. Otherwise, nothing is going to change. It has been on for almost 2 decades. So we will be deceiving ourselves to feel at a certain point, maybe the Nigerian government only needs some diplomatic ties where resources, military hardware, intelligence will be supplied to them and they will end terrorism. The government does not look like a government that is overwhelmed by terrorism. It does look as if key players within the government or the ruling party are basically dealing with, this basically Islamist killings is a pet project to such individuals, basically. So
yeah. Zariyi, you said nothing is actually working, looking at the measures of government, but then some people have argued that these community leaders engage in peace talks and negotiations with these groups, with these bandits and all these kidnappers, and in some way it helps in reducing attacks and kidnappings. And what we are seeing now in the rise in aggression is as a result of vested interests said to be stirring the honest nest. What do you think?
It is a lie. There is no peace when you rape women, you kill people, you tax them under some form of Islamic law, and then the people gather themselves and say, okay, we agree now. Just like the story of the lion that eats animals, and they agreed, instead of the lion picking on any one of us, let's just agree to be delivering one particular animal daily. That is not peace, that is surrender. So it is not peace. It never worked in any community in the Middle Belt. It never is working anywhere. It's just the mainstreaming of Islamism into the daily lives of Nigeria. In other words, we will continue killing you until you get to the point where you call us and listen to our demands and play ball by our rules, and then we call it peace. It's not peace. Basically, those are communities where Islamism or extremist Muslims have basically won. It's just the mainstreaming of terrorism and nothing else. It's not victory in any way. And the recent hike or spike in attacks and abductions and all of that is actually meant to send a clear signal. It's a subtle threat to the Christians who have been suffering, genocide. The idea that the mistake that anybody would do to meet, violence or maybe take any kinetic measure against us, we will pick on you as a soft target. That basically is what's happening. And I think the Christians will definitely be fools to want to see it differently. We are not fools, actually. We know what has been happening for years, and it's just unfortunate.
So if you're going to give your honest opinion, Zariyi, regarding those in captivity, what do you think is the safest and most effective way to secure their release, and probably a way to put an end to these kidnappings?
Well, securing their release, I believe that the Nigerian government knows who abducted them, and they will likely know where they are keeping them. Because if you have terrorists in different states accessing the city centers, accessing communities, making posts, meeting with Islamic clerics, meeting with monarchs, meeting with military officers, they will certainly have people they are in contact with. Now, we cannot risk the life of these children by basically acting irrationally. So by what I'm saying, by the fact that because there have been rescue missions where compromise with the terrorists or meeting the demands of the terrorists was not basically followed, I doubt if Nigeria will claim it doesn't have what it takes to do that, or at least collaborate with nations that have handled that. I mean, the Americans came and took some of their abductees. It's an operation they've always carried. Other nations have done it. So it's not a difficulty for Nigeria, because I will not be one of those that will actually suggest, let us meet the demands of the terrorists in order to secure the children. I wouldn't look at it that way. I would say, let us basically go brutal against terrorism and secure the release of those children. Because with regards to the location of the kidnappers, I wouldn't say that Nigerian government cannot claim that it doesn't know. And then, so their kidnap should not create another cycle that we will now use and claim. So to save the children, then let us basically negotiate with them and give them what they want, because we have a lot of people advocating for that, which is quite unfortunate. And I think it takes a lot of complicity for anybody to say today in Nigeria that meet the demands of terrorists and then live in peace. And to deal with the matter, let me round up. To solve it, the Nigerian government will demonstrate to the world it is genuinely committed to ending terrorism. First, proscribe Miyetti Allah as a terrorist organization. Secondly, you must, as a matter of utmost immediacy, outlaw open grazing.
Okay.
When you take those two steps, and then anybody in the administration that either as a suspicion, directly or remotely, has been linked to either supplying logistic to terrorists or playing soft to them, or has ever suggested negotiations or non-kinetic approach to terrorists, must be fired.
Okay.
Once you take those measures, you will demonstrate a willingness to end terrorism. Otherwise, it's just complicity and nothing else.
Thank you so much, Zariyi Yusuf, for sharing your thoughts with us on the news.